Hi people, this is Big Boss Calvin 83. I just have to tear this bitch a new asshole because she is so fucking dumb. She's worse than the stereotypical racist blonde. She's stupider than that. So I came across an article. I read it. It'll be in the description box. But this bitch is a race baiter. This bitch is racist. But I don't know why I don't know what it is with some you Negro-European male coons. I don't know why y'all like her. She ain't all that. She's nothing to look at. She got dyed, bleached. She got basically bleached platinum blonde hair. This is not even her natural hair color. And she just looks like a Neanderthal. She looks like the typical female monkey. Pale skinned monkey, double. She's the type of Caucasian chick that will get with a so-called black man, and if she caught or the word gets out that she fucked a nigga, she'll yell rape. You know what I'm saying? But y'all don't hear me though. This bitch is nothing. This bitch is just. The only reason why she's on television and has a platform is because she looks good. I should have a platform. But the only reason why I probably might not ever have a platform like this cunt does is because I keep it real. And and plus she's something to look at for the old racist Caucasian males to lust after. You know, the ones that are old enough to be her grandfather. Yeah, they jack off to her. But anyway, let's just play this. I want to play this clip, and I'm going to pull her apart, basically.
And you know I've got something to say about this disgusting, racist, hateful attack in Chicago, broadcast for the world to see on Facebook Live. The victim is a white, special needs man and possibly a Trump supporter. We know this because the four thugs who proudly...
She just called us a nigger. That's code for nigger.
...streamed this disgusting act, taunted him saying, F white people and F Donald Trump.
How is that a hate crime saying fuck Caucasian people, fuck white people, and fuck Donald Trump? Well, that's just reaching. But what about... what about in Idaho where that so-called black teen male got a clothing hanger shoved up his anus and got kicked repeatedly by a group of Caucasian teen male thugs? Oh, they ain't thugs. And he got off, and they got off for angrily raping a so-called young black teen male boy, raping him in the anus with a clothing hanger and forcing him to sing a racist Ku Klux Klan song. And they get off. He's not a sex offender. He's not convicted of a hate crime. He just gets a slap on the wrist and gets by with it. But where's your outrage, bitch? Oh, I forgot. You don't give a fuck about so-called black lives. Because so-called black lives don't fucking matter to you. Only so-called white lives matter. But you're in the comfort of your own fucking privilege talking shit on subjects you know nothing about.
The victim was tied, gagged, and beaten. At one point, his hair was cut with a knife until his scalp bled. Yes.
Somebody should do that to your dumb ass. I hope somebody does. Yeah, I don't give a... Yeah. I can't stand this bitch. I mean, she should be tortured and suffer for what she says. Because she's always saying dumb shit. But I hope this bitch suffers from some kind of illness one day. Yeah, I said it.
All the while, the thugs made comments about white people.
How's that racist when you always talking about people of color, particularly what you call black people? But we can't call. But every time we call you out on it, you dip and dodge and say you ain't racist when you are.
Yet, it wasn't immediately deemed a hate crime, and the Chicago police aren't sure if it was politically motivated.
We don't know what happened. We don't know what he said or did. I'm not excusing what those four individual teens. Yeah, I'm going to say, yeah, they're young, they're teens basically. I'm not excusing for what they did, but we don't know what happened before the video, the Facebook Live video. We don't know what he said or did to them, or what was the interaction, or what I think four teens in Chicago, so-called black teens, did and talked to and said, and what this so-called Caucasian, so-called white male, teen, said and did to those four individuals who kidnapped that guy and said, fuck white people and fuck Trump. So we don't know what happened before the video.
Are you freaking kidding me? This is the definition of a hate crime, and these four...
No, it's not.
Sick individuals deserve a seat on death row right next to Dylan Roof.
Wait. How the hell is that? How's that comparison to Dylan Roof? Dylan Roof went into a church, a predominantly so-called black church, and killed 9 people cold-bloodedly, and has not apologized for it. I don't expect the bastard to be sorry, but that's what he did. Those so-called black teens, 4 teens in Chicago that tied up that he's not really a teen, that special needs young man. Now that Caucasian male tied up and gagged, they just tortured him and bullied him and tormented him and made fun of him. But they should be killed, and they should get the death penalty for that. Are you serious, bitch? So you in your double standards. That's why I can't stand watching your dumb ass, and I'm sick and tired of people supporting your show. They only support your show is because you're a piece of ass. Because if you didn't have the good looks, if you wasn't a Caucasian female, you said dumb shit like that, you wouldn't even have a show. The only reason why you got it is because you're a privileged Caucasian female with fake ass platinum blonde hair, and you look good for old Caucasian males to jack off for. So shut up.
Part is, they're proud of this crap. They streamed it for the world to see. Times like these, we have to wonder, where are the parents? Not just yes.
Where are the parents? I should ask the same question about these Caucasian people, particularly these Caucasian male teens. Mainly, why are they terrorizing people of color? Terrorizing people of color, of male and female. Why is it that out in Idaho, that high school teen male annually raped a special needs so-called black teen male in the butt, and it's really upsetting me to get the words out. Why in the hell? How come you aren't outraged of a so-called young black male who got annually raped by basically this Caucasian young man, annually raped him with a clothing hanger, kicked him repeatedly, and these other thugs that were with him, these other Caucasian supremacist thugs that were with him, forced him to sing a KKK song and called him nigger and tortured him and tormented him, but they don't get no jail time. They should be on death row by your logic, bitch. Well, I forgot. You don't, but you're gonna make excuses for him because you're a bigot.
Yesterday, but when these 4 were growing up, because the breakdown of the American family has left young people, especially in the inner cities, with no role models.
There's no role models in the Caucasian community. Oh yes, there's Caucasian supremacists, and I'll tell you this: the reason why the family structure is fucked up because you bitches, your 4 mothers recruited my grandmother. Basically, I'll put it like this. Basically, the reason why your Caucasian females back in the late 60s and 70s recruited black women of the previous generations and convinced them and lied to them and deceived them to join the so-called white feminist movement. You told you bitches, you Caucasian bitches, and yes, you had something to do with it. Your foremothers told my female counterpart of the previous generations to join the Caucasian female feminist movement with these racist lesbians as well that were part of the feminist movement. Y'all told so-called black women, you don't need a man. You can get on welfare. You can do it without a man. You can do it by yourself. You can get a good job. You can work in corporate America. You know, you can, and then you brought it, then adding insult to injury, no fault divorce, and then you deny and do the feminism. So-called black men cannot get employment because you had this tactic of we can hire a woman. Y'all claim you Caucasian women have benefited off of the feminist movement. Y'all call yourselves the minority. Excuse me. When you are the majority. Okay. Y'all said if women are considered minorities, so we can hire a woman who's considered a minority, and we can hire a woman of color. She got two advantages. A so-called black woman, you give them so-called black women two advantages. She's a woman and she's black, and she gets a job over that so-called black man. And these same Negro-European females who sold out on the so-called black struggle, in the so-called black movement, which was the civil rights movement. It should have been called the so-called black movement, but okay. Sold out and threw her man and children underneath the bus. These so-called black women threw the so-called black man and children underneath the bus to join Caucasian women on that fight for bullshit equality, so-called equality, when really the truth of the matter is you women really wanted privilege and power without no damn responsibility. So you got the women, because you got more Caucasian women who are single mothers too. Y'all really call the single mothers, but nobody talks about that. But see, the so-called black women are a higher rate of single motherhood because you don't have the so-called black community don't have a patriarchal structure because you took the element, because Caucasian people who from outside the community went into the so-called black community and got the man removed from the fucking home. I'm back, sorry for the interruption, but I can't stand this bitch. I mean, I was busy doing a few things, I was snowing in with family, so I couldn't finish the video. But I'm back. I cannot believe this bitch Tomi is comparing just bullying and pranks, and because people get picked on all the time. Believe it or not, I'm not saying it's right, but that's the culture that we've been conditioned to bully and fuck with people and mistreat them, and just prank and just practice these pranks. I'm not saying what those what those teens did was right to that disabled Caucasian male, but let's use the Caucasian supremacist talking points. We don't know what happened before the recording of the video, Facebook Live video. We don't know what he did and what that Caucasian male teen did to those so-called black teens that basically just embarrassed his ass. Let's just keep it real. And basically pranked his ass and tormented him. We don't know if this, I'm pretty sure that so-called white disabled male teen is likely a racist. We don't know what he said and did for them to act like that. And we don't know what happened after the video. Oh, y'all hate. Oh, y'all. That's what y'all say to us. When every time we're victims of crimes by these Caucasian supremacists and these other ethnic people of color who want to be Caucasian supremacists due to so-called black people. We get victimized, we get bullied, we get tormented, we get tortured, and to the point we get harmed or even killed. We are victims of hate crimes every day as people of color, as so-called black people, but I don't hear her talking about it. She's silent. And let's not forget, Tommy, what about so-called white on white crime? I'll say that again, Tommy. What about so-called white and let's talk about so-called white on white crime. So-called white on white crime that you never talk about. Because you Caucasian people are the kings and queens of bullying and harassing people and fucking with people, terrorizing people, but y'all don't talk about that shit to other people, and even within your community. This bitch said, I don't know if I said this earlier, but this bitch wants to know where are the parents? Oh, okay. Let's talk about the breakdown of the family unit. During the 60s and during up to the 60s to the 70s, so-called black people were fighting for civil rights. Only us, and with a few people supporting us, but they were not getting fire hose sprayed on them, beaten and brutalized by the police, having dogs sicked on them, and tortured and killed inhumanely by racist Caucasian people, racist Caucasian cops and vigilantes and other Caucasian supremacists. So-called black people are fighting for civil rights. And then guess what? Comes Caucasian females wanting so-called equal rights. So-called equal rights. They want to be equal to Caucasian women, want to be equal to the Caucasian man. Okay? They really don't want equality. They want to be like the Caucasian man, actually be worse than the Caucasian man, be more like him, but want more rights, more privileges, and special treatment. Want to be I am woman, Henry Ward, and at the same time play the victim card, I'm a woman, damsel in distress bullshit. These bitches want to do whatever the fuck they want to do, but never take accountability and responsibility when shit goes bad, when they fail. Okay? When feminism came, then you had no-fault divorce, which broke up the family. Feminism was a tool to tax the other half of the population, which is women. Men were already working. Well, most of them were already working. Then you had women they brought women into the workforce, and masses into the workforce, so women were taxed too, but not as severely as men, but y'all don't talk about that. So women thinking that they're equal to men, they stop being ladies. Then sexual liberation, we can fuck around, we got the right to choose, we can be whores and sluts, and we can't be judged by it. Okay? Then no fault divorce. So if a woman if the woman is not happy in a relationship, because over 80% of divorces are initiated by women. So then comes no fault divorce, and women are so narcissistic, and they got this mentality. Oh, I don't need a man. I can do whatever the hell I want. And then you got welfare, and they brought feminist and the famous Caucasian women. I should say Caucasian females and Caucasian lesbian females, Caucasian females, heterosexual, and you had the homosexual Caucasian females known as the lesbians, who are Caucasian supremacists, racist against people of color, always have been. So they recruit so-called black women to become feminist. Y'all follow me so far? So because of that, then the so-called white woman lies and deceives the so-called black woman and saying, oh, the so-called black man is oppressing you. and he don't want you to do this and that. Mind you, so-called black men don't have no damn power in this country, and especially for the last, ever since so-called black people, African people were captured from the motherland, from known as Nubia Kush, Africa. We were brought here to North America and built America, free slave labor, beaten, brutalized, lynched, castrated, maimed, raped, murdered in the most inhumane way, tortured, what have you, used as guinea pigs to test for diseases. Our bodies were butchered, all forms of torture that nobody don't want to talk about. And then, okay, now fast forward to now. Then you had Jim Crow and this Jim Crow, where they were terrorizing so-called black people left and right and killing us inhumanely. Towns were being burnt down by these evil albinoid female devils, known as the so-called white woman, making false accusations of so-called black men raping her or robbing her or assaulting her, and just Caucasian people lying on other so-called black people. So there was so-called black people in the so-called black communities where towns were destroyed, burnt down to the ground. You know, basically. And because of this shit, so-called black people had enough, and so we fought for civil rights and integration, which was a mistake. But that's another video. So while so-called black people, as you know, all so-called African Americans, black people as a whole, were fighting to be equal to Caucasian people, fighting for this integration, so we can eat in the same restaurant and live in the same neighborhood, use the same bathroom, drink out of the same water fountain, and have the same opportunities as Caucasian people, go to the same schools as they do, go to their schools without no problems, which just still is a problem. So when basically in a nutshell, when so-called black people were progressing, then the feminist movement came and they deceived all women that the man was evil. He was demonized as the rapist, pedophile, killer, terrorist. Now, mind you, the only terrorist was the Caucasian male and female. The biggest shit starters were the Caucasian male and female. The biggest whores and sluts are the Caucasian people. Deadbeat dads and deadbeat moms. Child killers. Pedophiles. Caucasian people, male and female. So the only man who has the power to oppress people is the Caucasian male. And the only group that has the power to oppress women is a Caucasian male. Nobody else. Nobody other male can do that. Y'all understand what I'm saying? So the powers that be brought in the feminist movement, which is started by a bunch of dykes and lesbians who were Caucasian supremacists, basically Caucasian females, came together. Let's start a feminist movement with these bitch-made mangina effeminate males who had their own agenda, keeping it real. So I'm trying to hurry up with this. So due to the fact that they brought in the feminist movement, so-called white women needed numbers so women can get their so-called liberation and equality and rights. So Caucasian females seeked out so-called black females and told them, you're being oppressed by the so-called black man, which is a bunch of bullshit. So-called black men don't have no damn power, never had power for the last 500 years, never been in a position of power to oppress women or anybody. So that was a big fucking lie, and these stupid Negro women fell for the bullshit. And then they brought in no-fault divorce, break up your family. If you're not happy with your relationship,
You know, most women file for divorce. So anybody can end their relationship. So women took advantage of that. Women had a right to work. They took advantage of that. Women had the right to choose, get an abortion if they don't want the child, or put the child up for adoption if they don't want the responsibility. Women had the right to fucking suck anything without judgment. So they took advantage of that. So then comes the welfare in WIC. And so the welfare was pushed in the poor communities, particularly the so-called black communities. So when the so-called black man was disenfranchised because he was denied employment and opportunity. So, and a lot of so-called black people fought because of integration, that Caucasian people were going to treat them fair, give them jobs, we can work, we exist in their system, and they're not going to bother us and not try to fuck us over. Big mistake. So they decided to, since we're going to disenfranchise men of color by denying these companies, will deny men employment, particularly so-called black men. So they put the so-called black woman to work, gave her the jobs, gave her the opportunity to go to school, opportunities, public assistance, what have you, welfare. So, and then that Caucasian female, devil, said, you don't need no man, you don't have to get married, you don't have to have a family, you can be a career woman. Now, mind you, these Caucasian females, some of them were on that bullshit, still stuck by their man, did not throw the man underneath the bus, the Caucasian male that is. So these silly Negro women joined forces with Caucasian females and Caucasian lesbians, who were man-haters to begin with. And then that's how you destroy the so-called black community. Deny so-called black men to have work and have a job because he can't provide for his family. Now we got to go for public assistance. Now since the man can't be in the house, can't be the head of the household, can't live in the house with his wife and kids, or girlfriend with children, woman and kids, whatever. So the man cannot be there. In order for the woman to collect benefits, the man cannot be in the house. He cannot be there. He cannot be in the children's lives, or she won't get the check. And then we had Child Protective Services. Now where was I? Now let me talk about the Child Protective Services, DIFAS. Now because of these liberals, everything's child abuse. Now the state, the government is telling you, basically the government can raise your kids, but you can't. You can't teach your kids anything, even if it's beneficial to them. Everything's child abuse. You can't hit your kids. You can't talk. You can't yell at your kids. And don't get me wrong, I'm against hitting your kids. Don't hit your kids unless your life is in danger. Okay? Don't curse your kids out. Don't yell at your kids, and don't humiliate your kids and belittle your kids and verbally abuse your kids. Okay? I'm against that. But the powers that be, the system, the law, the government, and the school system being involved in family business took it too far. Saying that if you hold your kids accountable or shame them within the privacy of your own home, you're wrong. You correct them, you point out their mistakes. If you're being firm and stern with them and direct, that's abuse. If your child is aggressive and you stand up to your child without hitting them, of course, unless you have to defend yourself, that's abuse. Since you can't teach and you can't even you can't even tell your kids certain things. You can't even talk to your kids. You can't even do anything with your child. But the school system can raise your kids and miseducate your kids and indoctrinate your kids with lies and bullshit and propaganda. Tell them to hate themselves and mislead them, indoctrinate them to be how they want them to be, a good slave, productive slave, don't know anything but just get the job done. In a nutshell, And if they can't conform to the system, then they're either dead or in jail. Okay? Now the police can beat your kids and shoot your kids, kill your kids. But you as a parent that has that, is if you are direct with your kids and assertive with your kids and tell them this is wrong, this is unacceptable, firm and stern with your kids, that's abuse. And that's why you got the mess that you got today. All people are affected by this. That's why society is so disenfranchised. Then the poisons in the air, the food, and the water. You know, with all this constant brainwashing and manipulation that society does to the people, especially the youth, and all these images. So that's why things are the way they are. With looks, stats, fame, and money. That's all you see in the money. That's all you see in the media. Looks, stats, fame, and money. Listen to those people. Don't listen to the school system. Listen to the school. Listen to the teacher. Don't listen to your parents. Don't listen to family. That's how it is. And as far as role models, the only people that should be role models is the fucking parents. Okay? That's all I gotta say. Let's see what else you got to say, Tommy.
Where are the parents? Not just yesterday, but when these four were growing up. Because the breakdown of the American family has left young people, especially in the inner cities, with no role models. That's why they turn to celebrities and rap stars who...
That's all kids. Even the privileged, rich, wealthy kids do the same damn thing. Like I told you.
To chant F Trump for guidance and leadership. Popular culture has...
But you Caucasian folks were saying F Obama, so what's the difference?
Has made politically motivated attacks like these more acceptable in the minds of some. In the minds of these four thugs in Chicago, for dang sure.
She just said to him, she just basically saying we're all niggers. When a Caucasian person uses the word thug, or even even any other non-Caucasian person uses the term thug, referring to a so-called black person, just saying nigger. Just so y'all know. So basically, she's saying nigger on the slide. She's race baiting.
They certainly didn't seem ashamed of their actions. No, they were proud, and they streamed it because they also have been...
But the hate crimes that I saw of Caucasian people victimizing people of color, they didn't have no guilt. Like out in Idaho, like I said, you had a bunch of Caucasian supremacist teens, particularly racist Caucasian males, who targeted a disabled so-called black teen male and ganged up on him, jumped him, shoved a coat hanger up his butt, up his anus, then forced him to sing KKK songs, Ku Klux Klan songs, called him the nigger, and then when he was down in the pain, kicked the coat hanger more up in his butt. Now he's permanently injured from that incident. Where's your outrage on that, bitch? And I also got a story out that happened a few years ago out in Illinois, where you had a bunch of Caucasian teens, male and female, targeted two so-called black male teens and killed them, tortured them, and inhumanely killed them, maimed them, with having sex with their dead bodies. Basically, these so-called black male teens out in Illinois was tortured, beaten, strangled, and just brutalized and murdered, and they had sex with their dead bodies. Now that's sick. Where's your outrage on that, Tommy?
And given the idea that consequences don't exist for crap like this. And the mainstream media is also to blame. If the race rules were reversed here, can you...
You are part of the media, so what are you talking about? And don't give me that false equivalent bullshit that you're about to spew out.
Imagine the coverage. The race of the assailants...
Actually, it did happen in reverse. Y'all hide it. Y'all suppress that information. It don't make mainstream news. It don't make mainstream media. You hide it. You demonize the victims, people of color who are victims. You victim blame them. You make excuses for these racist Caucasian people, that the group that you're a part of. You make excuses and rationalize the actions of these Caucasian supremacists. You're silent on these issues. You're not going to talk about it. But I digress. But you prove my point. So miss me with that false equivalence BS. Reverse racism bullshit.
To be plastered in every headline from here to Timbuktu. But if it...
Nope. You're incorrect.
It doesn't fit the race-baiting agenda of the left and their cohorts in the mainstream, it doesn't quite...
Like you're doing to the right?
...get the same attention. If this saying wasn't paraded on Facebook Live, the mainstream would have likely diluted, dismissed, or outright ignored it. If it bleeds...
Yeah, that's what y'all do to when so-called black people are victims by these Caucasian supremacists. And these other ethnic groups of color who got a Caucasian supremacist mindset. Every time we are victimized, brutalized, and killed, even and raped, y'all rationalize it and y'all blame the victim, who are people of color, so-called black people. And you go and you look up their past, you try to find some dirt on them to use it against them to make it seem that their life has no value because they made a few mistakes. Meanwhile, you have Caucasian people committing all kinds of crimes. In the minute you find out they have a record or they had problems at school, problems at home, you hide that, you suppress that information for the public to see. Double standard.
If it leads, but only if it's the right color, huh? And I'm so...
You're a hypocrite. That's what you're doing. So-called white is right, and whatever's so-called black and brown is wrong.
Still waiting for President Obama to hold a press conference about this like he does with every other hate crime. Still waiting.
He just did, and he threw his own people underneath the bus. Nothing more than a half-breed Negro-European coon. An Oreo.
Listen, I can't and I won't sit here and say this was a Black Lives Matter motivated act. We don't know that. I do hope the group comes out...
Well, there you go, blaming so-called Black Lives Matter for everything. Now imagine if when these Caucasian supremacists who victimize people of color, how would you feel if you said, oh, the Klan did it? Oh, Caucasian people are all bad, you know, all lives matter, blue lives matter. Now, the minute we say something about that, oh, you're generalizing. We're not all like that. You need to judge us on the individual. Meanwhile, what you're doing, Tommy, you're instead of judging those so-called black teens out in Chicago as individuals, and you looking at it as an isolated incident, which is not a hate crime. It's just a bullying, abuse, prank, domestic violence. The way I see it. What you're doing is lumping all so-called black people as bad and trying to demonize us on the slide. But meanwhile, when your people do dirt, Caucasian people do dirt, you rationalize it and make excuses and try to paint them to be in jail and they made a mistake and they're just kids. Boys will be boys, girls will be girls. Bullshit.
It makes it clear these thugs are not what BLM stands for. I hope to see that. I hope to see the group loudly and visibly reject this attack. Because this kind of attack should shock and anger all of us as Americans. This is not who we are.
There you go with the selective outrage bullshit.
This is not the young people we raise in the greatest nation on the face of the earth. I'm praying for all of us. Those are my final thoughts from Dallas. God bless, and take care.
Now, I mean, fuck that bitch. I mean, America being great. America was never great for people of color. It was damn sure never great. I mean, basically the African people. So-called, I mean, what you call black people, was never great for the Native Americans. And it was not really great for other ethnic people of color. But y'all gave them some perks, and because their skin is a little bit lighter, and their hair is a little bit straighter, so you gave them some perks. You let them reap the benefits of what so-called black people did. Because without so-called black people fighting for civil rights, these other groups would not be benefiting off of our struggle. And you as a Caucasian woman would not be having to be in the position of privilege that you are. You gained more privilege from the civil rights movement more than ever before. Acknowledge that, bitch. Anyway, I want to show you some other stuff that she refuses to acknowledge. This is what I'm talking about right here. U.S. teens had freeway sex on corpses of men they lured into their house, strangled to death, and hogtied. This was like February 20, back in 2013, basically about almost 4 years ago. 2013 February of this month. Look at these savages. Look at these evil people. But she don't call them thugs. She don't call this bitch a thug. She don't call these pale-skinned monkey devils a thug. She don't call them thugs. Right here. Just look to the left. Alright, let's read on. Morbid. Elisa, I think I'm saying her name that correctly. Massaro, age 18 at the time, allegedly has a necrophilia fetish and engaged in a freeway sex on the corpses of 2 murdered men. An 18-year-old woman with a necrophilia fetish had freeway sex on the corpses of 2 men who she had sexual partners strangled. It was claimed today. Joshua Meener, 24, pled the bodies of Eric Glover and Terrence Rankins, both age 22, together, and placed a beige sheet across him so he and his longtime girlfriend, Alicia Massaro, could lie together on top of them at Massaro's home in Joliet, Illinois, I think that's how you say it, according to police reports. Meener told police he remembered years back that Massaro had told him she wanted to have sex with a dead guy. Sick as hell. But Tomi Lahren ain't gonna talk about that. No. But I digress. So he hoped to fulfill part of her fantasy. These Caucasian females, bitches, are sick as hell. These Caucasian bitches are nasty and sick. But I digress. According to documents, Adam Landerman, the 19-year-old son of a police sergeant, may have joined Massaro and minor sexual romp as well. The report says. The report. Patch.com released revolting new details today in the shocking January 10th murders allegedly committed by Meener, Landerman, Massaro, and 18-year-old Deputy McKee was okay, I'm back. Massaro grinned with her girlfriend. Massaro grinned when her boyfriend asked her to have sex and initially declined. Later, though, she admitted that she agreed to it. Mackey told police that she believes Landerman joined the sexual acts as well. Mackey said Meener was the ringleader who came up with the idea, who killed Glover and Rankins. She said Landerman was a follower who only did what Meener told him, according to the report. After killing the men, Landerman jumped jumped on their backs and surfed on their dead bodies, according to reports. He ain't a thug. He is a savage, an evil motherfucker. He a thug. Look at this snow monkey, a thug too, a savage. Look at this bitch, nasty and ugly, a thug too. It says right here under her phone mugshot, trapped Bethany Mackey, 18, allegedly lured the victims to her friend's house with the promise of sex and video games. The corpses excited a zombie noise, a final gasping sound. The bodies also evacuated their bowels, claimed. Minor claimed. They then hog-tied the victims' hands and feet together with dirty clothes and electrical cord. You talking about some evil shit. This is one of the most brutal, heinous, and upsetting things I ever heard. I take that back. This is one of the most brutal, heinous, upsetting things I ever seen in my 27 years of law enforcement. Police Chief Mike Trafton said after the January slayings. Not only the crime scene, but the disregard for common decency towards human beings. Well, these Caucasian folks, most Caucasian people are not human. They don't have no humanity. But I digress. Police reports say Mackey knew Rankins and invited him and Glover over the promise of sexual favors. Minor later admitted they believed the men had a lot of money and they were planning to rob them. They believed Rankins was a drug dealer and carried $100 with him. It's demonic, Rankin's mother, Jamil Kent, said. This is evil. Trafton, the police chief, said. Massaro, Lahren, and Minor were very much surprised when police walked in on them Thursday. You know why they were surprised? Because they thought they wouldn't get away with it because of white privilege. But I digress. Mackey had left the house, but police arrested her later nearby Kankakee. Rankin's mother said her son and Glover had been friends for 5 years. Family members said they called police on January 10th after they hadn't heard from the two since Wednesday. It's just senseless, Glover's mother, Nicole Jones, said. It's hard for me to say the words. The circumstances surrounding the death are still under investigation. What is there to investigate? But I digress. But some local reports suggested that drugs may have been involved. On who? I hope you're not on those Caucasian folks. Glover graduated from Joliet Central High School and had made the honor roll and participated in football, wrestling, and track, his family said. Rankins described as a very outgoing, loving, fun person by his mother, graduated from Joliet West High School. Massaro's father, Philip Massaro, told Herald News in Joliet that he was in disbelief. All I can say is a terrible thing that it happened. I can't believe my daughter had anything to do with it, he said. I don't know what happened. I just don't know what to say. I can't really talk about it. I'm too devastated, and I can't talk about it. Massaro's lawyer, George Leonard, did not immediately return phone calls to the Associated Press for comment Monday. Charles Brunts attorney for Mackey declined comment. Public defenders for Landerman and Minor could not be reached. No one answered the phone at the public defender's office in Will County. Minor's mother, Melody Minor, told the Herald News that there's no way my son can do this. These people always say that shit, but I digress. Minor was previously convicted of residential burglary, according to the newspaper. See, this is what I'm talking about. You notice how they always, when Caucasian people do dirt, they always sweep it under the fucking rug. Now back to the article. Charles Palaki, spokesman for the Will County State's Attorney's Office, said State's Attorney James Gonsko were permanently prosecuted in the case as he did former police officer Drew Peterson's. Jurors convicted Peterson in September of first-degree murder in the 2004 drowning death of his third wife. Palaki will not discuss any details about the investigation in Gillette slayings, but he did address the issue of race. While the two victims were black and the four suspects were white, Palaki said there is no information at this point that indicates race was a factor in the killings of Glovers and Rankins. Are you fucking serious? Race had something to do with it. Ethnicity always has something to do with it. And this is a hate crime. But you notice how it's rationalized by Caucasian people, by other Caucasian people. They always stick together, people. To my people of color, wake up. And other non-Caucasian people, Caucasian people will stick together, whether it's good or bad. Whenever Caucasian people do good or bad, they stick together no matter what. They always stick together and always take up for each other, even when they're in the fucking wrong. You know, like how women do. These people are bitches. Again, there's no media outrage. I mean, here's another story. Mentally handicapped black worker rescued after 4 years of torture and enslavement by South Carolina restaurant owners. Two brothers in Horry County, South Carolina, are facing charges that they treated a mentally handicapped black employee like a slave for years, beating and overworking a man who lived in a squalor on property owned by the restaurant. According to the Charleston Post and Courier, I guess it's called Courier, two Charleston attorneys filed a civil suit on behalf of Christopher Smith, who worked at the J&J cafeteria in Conway for 23 years, but was horrendously abused and exploited from 2010 to 2014. The suit lists 14 counts against J&J owner Ernest J. Edwards and manager Bobby Paul Edwards, including false imprisonment, discrimination, and exploitative labor practices. Bobby Edwards, age 50, was arrested a year ago in connection with the case. Those charges are still pending. Last October, Smith was rescued when social workers received a tip from an anonymous source who expressed concern for the man's safety. Attorneys Mullins McGord and David Aguilar, I guess that's how you say his last name, said that while the civil suit cannot change the past or rectify the harm done to Smith. Hopefully, it will bring positive change in the future. The Post-Inquirer explained that Smith worked at the Edwards Brothers business for more than 2 decades, but it was Bobby took over as manager in 2010. Smith's situation turned ugly. Smith was routinely called the N-word, according to the suit. He was savagely beaten with a frying pan, hot tongs, butcher knives, belt buckles, and fists. He worked 18-hour shifts, Monday through Saturday, and 11-hour shifts on Sundays, with no breaks, receiving little pay. His total wages for each year added up to less than $3,000. The complaint against Edwards said that Smith was often abused on the job, dragged into the walk-in freezer where he could be heard screaming in terror and pain by other employees and begging his abusers not to kill him. Smith told social services workers that he was too afraid to run away or leave his job at the J&J cafeteria because he believed that the Edwards brothers would hurt him even worse or murder him. When he wasn't at work, Smith lived in a filthy, cockroach-infested apartment owned by the Edwards brothers. The lawsuit describes Smith's living conditions as subhuman. McLeod and Aylar reported that when Smith was examined by medical professionals and the Conway, South Carolina police, he was covered in scars and evidence of prolonged brutal abuse. He was targeted for abuse by the Edwards brothers, they said, because he's black. So, I mean, where's all lives matter? How come your girl, Tomi Lahren, ain't talking about this? How come people at Fox News and these other Caucasian-owned and Jewish-owned media outlets aren't talking about this? Because you know why? It does not fit their racist narrative. They want to demonize people of color, and while putting themselves as Caucasian people, Europeans, as angelic and good, kind-hearted people, when they're not in the first place. Again, I mean, there's no outcry. I mean, these hate crimes committed by Caucasian people against people of color and other groups. I mean, when Caucasian people commit hate crimes against other groups, especially people of color, against people of color, that is, the media never talks about it. But your girl, Tomi Lahren, says that it will be an outcry and it will be all over the media, which is a lie. She's lying. She's just race baiting. This was almost 10 years, but it's still relevant to this day. Nothing has changed. Just because time goes by, that doesn't mean people and animals don't change their habits. People do not. Times change, but most people stay the same. They got the same behaviors, the same nature as they did a long time ago. But I digress. West Virginia woman speaks about torture. Megan Williams thought she was going to a party. That's why she was tagged along with a woman she hardly knew up a remote West Virginia hollow run to a rundown trailer surrounded by beer cans and broken down furniture. But there was no party, Williams said. I realized I made a bad mistake. For at least a week, authorities say the 20-year-old so-called black woman was kept captive in a shed, tortured, beaten, forced to eat rat and dog and human feces, and raped by 6 Caucasian men and women who taunted her with racial slurs. They kept saying, "This is what we do to niggers down here." Again, nobody knew about this in the mainstream media, national media, but I digress. Williams told the Associated Press in one of her most extensive interviews since the shocking case made national headlines last month, seated in a rocking chair in her mother's living room about 50 miles from that shed, that slight woman with cocoa-colored skin says she was hopelessly outnumbered by people who wanted to hurt a black person. "I just hope they fry for what they did to me. That's really all I got to say," she said. "I hope they fry." West Virginia does not have a death penalty, but the 6 suspects could spend the rest of their lives in prison convicted of rape and kidnapping charges. What about hate crime charges? Still, we don't get justice. I shake my head. Still, back to the report. Still, Williams and her family want more. They want the case prosecuted as a hate crime, something authorities have so far stopped doing. I'll read that again. They want the case prosecuted as a hate crime, something authorities have so far stopped short of doing. That's because it's Caucasian people don't give a shit about people of color, so-called black people. But I digress. A correlation of civil rights organizations and black leaders are now uniting behind the Williams family, organizing a hate crime awareness march for November 3rd in Charleston in hopes of pressuring prosecutors to act. "This case deserves national concern and national outrage," said Malik Shabazz, co-founder of Black Lawyers for Justice. Prosecutors have backed off state hate crime charges, saying they only carry an additional 10 maximum penalty and could complicate their case. Before I go any further, what they're really saying is, now if the situation was in reverse, now if that was a Caucasian female and a bunch of so-called black people did the shit that they did, that these racist Caucasian supremacists did to that sister that I'm reading about, they would make sure that group of so-called black people be underneath the jail or get the death penalty. But I digress. Where was I? For one, I'll read it. I guess I lost my place. Shit. But right here. Prosecutors have backed off the state and hate crime charges, saying they only carry an additional 10-year maximum penalty and could complicate their case. Now, Caucasian people were victims of hate crimes by other non-Caucasian people, but particularly so-called black people. That would not be the case. Like I said, those group of so-called black people committing that so-called hate crime on that Caucasian person, they'll be underneath the jail or get the death sentence or be killed by the cops or a racist vigilante. For one, hate crimes typically involve strangers, and Williams knew one of the suspects. Well, I call bullshit, but I digress. She filed a charge of domestic assault against him in July. Williams has been advised not to discuss anything about her prior dealings with the suspects or more graphic details of her experience. But when Williams does detail her alleged torture, it comes in fits, horrifying, disjointed memories that she allegedly endures spill forth while she fridges and frowns. They braided some of the switches. They branded some of the switches together and beat me across the back. They tore off my clothes and everything, and they took me up the lake, and they said that was the place where they're going to cut my throat and throw me in. She said. Williams looks off into the distance at the end of each recollection. She often falls quiet, reverting to yes and no answers, each response punctuated with ma'am. At times, she reaches up to touch her scalp where her hair was cut off and yanked out during the ordeal. Megan's adoptive mother, Carmen Williams, said her daughter is not fully capacitated. Her daughter is not a full capacity. Mentally and easily trusted others. She's a little slow and kind of hard for her to comprehend sometimes, she said. So I think they played a big part in it. Suspects in the case outlined a series of sexual crimes. So basically, these Caucasian supremacists are cowards. They only go after the weak. They only target the most vulnerable people or people of color who are in vulnerable positions. Statements from Frankie Brewster and her son Bobby Brewster alleged that Williams was forced to perform oral sex on Frankie Brewster under a threat of death. She was forced to perform oral sex on Danny Combs at 9 point, that she was made to lick their toes and raped and humiliated. They said I was never going to see my family again, Megan Williams said. It was that fear that led me to cut her duct tape and constraints with a knife that she hid anyway. She then hung her tiny arms out of the small window of the shed she was kept in, yelling for help. Williams said a guy named Eddie heard her calls and she believes he called for help. Within hours, deputies responded to an anonymous tip and came to the Brewster's trailer, asking for Williams by name. She has no doubt that if the police hadn't shown up, she would be dead. Memories of the captivity haunt Williams in the form of terrifying dreams. Every time I close my eyes, all else I see is that knife, the one they kept stabbing me and stabbing me with. She said, I was screaming, I was crying, they kept kicking me. Large scrapes cover her left leg, where her ankle was cut and her thigh was stabbed 3 times, and she still walks with a slight limp. She has received hundreds of cards and gifts from as far away as Iraq. She hopes to use donations to a trust fund to obtain her GED and attend college. She speaks on becoming a nurse's assistant. She's slowly gaining weight, and her face lights up when she asks about her favorite food. Ribs from Safe-A-Lot, she says, grinning. Then she looks to her mother and laughs. And that's the end. Now, this is what I spoke about in my recent video. There is no outrage of a group of Caucasian males, teens, and this is the ringleader, who actually basically a group of Caucasian male teens, and this is the ringleader. You know, basically, he was a football player, and there was a disabled so-called black teen, part of the football team, and he and his other fellow Caucasian male buddies got together and they jumped this disabled so-called black male teen and raped him with a coat hanger and humiliated him and emasculated this brother, forcing him to sing racist songs, and just injure him badly and kick it. And when he fell to the ground, they kicked the coat hanger in his anus. But there's no outcry about this. I mean, look at this double standard. To the left, this guy beat, raped, assaulted, and humiliated a disabled boy, including ramming a coat hanger in his rectum, then kicking it repeatedly. No charge with hate crime, no charge with rape, no national outrage, sentenced to 2 years probation with no record when completed. You see the double standard? This is white privilege. To the left. And to the right, these Chicago so-called black teens tied a disabled Caucasian male charged with hate crime will most likely go to jail. National consensus outrage. Animals. Kill them. Time to stop relying on cops. Right, of course. And why are you mad? I mean, exactly. I mean, and I'm going to do another video about this. Caucasian people are no different than the Caucasian people in previous generations. The millennials are no different than the ones in the 1800s and through the 1900s all the way up to the 60s and 70s. The Caucasians, I mean, most Caucasian supremacists, the majority of Caucasian people have not changed their racist ideologies and their hatred for people of color. And that's a fact of reality. Just read this. Deshaun Winston needs to grasp for air while hanging from a tree, or get drafted by the Browns and get CTE. Either way, the nigger needs to die. This is over a football game. I don't know how I can go back to school knowing how many black people look at me at a derogatory way with so many Deshaun Winstons out there. And guess who's leading the charge? A Caucasian female, continuing and teaching that racism, keeping that racism going, helping her Caucasian male that she claims to be oppressed by, helping him, well, he is a bitch, helping him with his Caucasian supremacy. Basically, and then you wonder why to you sisters out there, you wonder why brothers are annoyed with you for joining. You want to join forces with Caucasian females who don't give a shit about you. They're just using you for numbers. I mean, this bitch should be in jail because that's a hate crime, and to me, I look at it as a terroristic threat. She's inciting violence. But again, you got people on Fox News and these other Caucasian media outlets not talking about this. They suppress this information. And that bitch, Tomi Lahren, ain't saying nothing about the cases and the reports that I read to you tonight. And you wonder why I really don't care about a Caucasian male teen being bullied. When we've been bullied, when people of color always getting bullied, always getting picked on, not just by racist Caucasian people, but just Caucasian people. I don't mean the majority of them are racist. But you got other ethnic groups of color, like your Latinos, like your Asians, your East Indians, your Arabs, who practice Caucasian supremacy, Caucasian supremacy, and want to be accepted by Caucasian people, or just want to be Caucasian, so they have the similar ideologies, even though they're not in a position to practice racism, but they're highly prejudiced against so-called black people. And one is dead too. And Caucasian people love them foot soldiers. And then when and to you other ethnic groups of color, when they're through using you, they will turn on you and harm you and kill you too. Just want y'all to know. So you wonder why? I mean, and not to. And all I gotta say is this: I don't want to make this too long, but people of color, particularly black people, African people, whatever term you want to go by, Nubian people, yeah, we need to wake up. Stop crying and be sympathetic and nurturing to these racist, evil, albinoid devils who don't give a fuck about you. These pale skinned monkey devils, I call them, have no care in the world for you. They want you dead. They want to harm you. They want to kill you. They want to torture you. They get off hurting you. But y'all want to be friends with them. And some of y'all want to fuck them. Even though they want to come after us. They like these crazy bitches. They don't want you, but they want your attention. And they're always feeding off your attention. They're always using you to make money off you. And I'm so sick and tired of so-called black people, which I call many of y'all coons, crying over a Caucasian, they say disabled teen male who don't give a fuck about you either. You're crying over a so-called disabled Caucasian male teen who's a racist, likely, who said nigger in his house in the privacy among his other groups of people, particularly other Caucasian people, his family members. What do you think he was taught by his parents? The N-word, okay? So he don't give a shit about y'all. So y'all Negroes who cared about that Caucasian male disabled teen, he don't give a fuck about you either. And these Caucasian people who claim they got a plight and going through something, they don't give a fuck about so-called black people unless it affects them personally. But what am I saying? Y'all Negropeans are not gonna get it. But as far as I'm concerned, you Caucasian people, y'all can play victim, cry the blues. I'm not crying for you. I don't give a fuck about what happens to you motherfuckers because you don't give a fuck about what happens to people like me. Y'all don't go through racism. Y'all don't go through discrimination. You're not victims of countless bullying and y'all commit hate crimes on everybody. But we get blamed for the ills in the world. And y'all want to pick on so-called Black Lives Matter because you're mad at the fact that people, so-called black people, a certain group, are speaking out against Caucasian supremacy and challenging it and pointing out racism. But that makes us racist in your sick, retarded psychology. When the truth of the matter is, you're the racist. And if you want to play selective outrage, I and people like me can play selective outrage too. So, and I'm not going to be biased, but I will point out so-called white on white crime. Because that's what you should be worried about. You people should be worried about that. Not be worried about what so-called black people are doing. You all love being in our fucking business. Because you are obsessed with us. You are jealous of us. In a sick, twisted way. You know. But anyway, I mean, dude, that bitch, so fuck Tomi Lahren, fuck Megyn Kelly, fuck that Lebanese chick on Fox, that old hag, I can't stand her either, and the rest of these Negropean coons and bedwenches, and Uncle Ruckus motherfuckers, fuck y'all too, like your Larry Elders of the world, Stacey Dashes, who want to push this narrative of help aid Caucasian supremacy. When they, guess what? To y'all sellout Negropeans. They're going to throw you underneath the bus too. And then when y'all get your wake-up call, don't ask so-called conscious black people to help you out. And to you Caucasian people, when you realize that you're being used and exploited too by the elite Caucasian people, don't talk about the New World Order. Don't talk about we need to stand together. When you Caucasian people throughout history and present have always divided us and always played sides. Okay? So what Tomi Lahren is talking about, a so-called hate crime. No, that's not a hate crime. Humiliating somebody and bullying somebody and beating somebody, that's just domestic violence. That's just abuse But a hate crime is what I showed you. And you can look at the articles and you can forward this video to that bitch in Fox News for all I care, even though the problem might not stay up. But it is what it is, because the problem with Caucasian people, racist ones, I'll just say Caucasian people, good or bad, they want to push this racist narrative that people of color are all evil. But the minute you point out their evil ways, which is the majority, they want you to judge them judge them as an individual, and treat it like an isolated incident. Fuck out of here with that hypocrisy, racism, and hypocrisy. Majority of Caucasian people are bad people. History has shown it, and they have not changed since then. So stop caring. So people of color, stop caring about other groups of people when they don't give a shit about you. And to you Caucasian people, if you're not racist, if you don't think that way, you should be out. You should be mad at all the above. But you should be mad about how other people within your group who are racist are treating people of color and other groups bad because of bigotry and ignorance. But if you don't want to separate yourselves from the racists, then you're a racist too. You're part of the fucking problem. And I'll expose you too, because I'm part of the solution. And I'm not the get along Negro, so I will call you out on your bullshit. But stay out of our fucking business. Stop trying to demonize us, and stop trying to paint so-called Black Lives Matter and any so-called black movement as evil and wicked when we're defending ourselves and standing up for ourselves against your evil, wicked ways and your Caucasian supremacy. So shut up. I'm out. Peace. And y'all people have a good day.
Oh, by the way, Tommy, this is to you. Now, it's funny how you came up with this silly false equivalence, which was the dumbest equivalence, saying that those teens in Chicago who bullied that guy and tortured him and abused him and humiliated him on Facebook, it's the same thing as Dylan Roof going into a so-called black church and killing people because he just did not like people of color. And using that as an equivalent to that makes you an idiot. Because Dylan Roof killed people because of the color of their skin, which is a hate crime, was just brutal murder. And he laughed about it because he's evil. And guess who raised him? Somebody like you. I hope you can't have children. I hope you've got some kind of fertility problems. Cervical cancer. Yeah, I said it. You can't biologically have children. Because you are creating these Dylan Roofs. Which I'm glad the bastard got the death penalty because he needs to die. That's one less racist off the street. One less thug and savage. But you don't call Caucasian people thugs and savages. This male, this savage, kills 9 people in a church, where people are not armed and came to worship and docile. He kills people at a church due to the color of their skin because he went off bullshit propaganda that you spew out, this racist narrative that Caucasian women are being raped by so-called black men. Now, in his mind, he thinks a Caucasian woman having sex with a so-called black man, or in particular, a man of color, is considered rape when it's not. When you had so many so-called black women being raped by Caucasian men, Caucasian males, I mean. But you race baiting, promoting this propaganda that so-called black people are thugs, criminals, and savages, when the truth of the matter is, Caucasian people throughout history and present and future are the biggest terrorists, are the biggest thugs, biggest criminals, and the most demonic, evil human beings on the planet. Now as far as you talking about about police, and you love police and respect the badge, it's all right here, people. Where were you? How come you were silent when you had
Caucasian males during the last year killing cops left and right. You didn't call those guys a thug. You didn't attack those Caucasian males, and you didn't say blue lives matter, all lives matter. No, you were silent. The only time you said something when it was a so-called black person getting into it with a cop, which is rare. But when you had Scott Michael Green and these other Caucasian male cop killers killing cops, but you didn't say nothing about that. But you don't give a fuck about the cops. You just want so-called black people to be abused and bullied by the cops. As long as they're killing niggers, then you're for cops. But if a Caucasian male kills a cop mainly, or a Caucasian person curses out the cop or fights the cop or does harm to a cop, you're silent because you don't care. Or harms people within your group or people within your family, then you give a fuck. You know, it's like, you see how goofy and dumb you are? That's why I can't stand this bitch. I hope she don't have no damn children. I hope she got some cervical cancer and got some fertility problems like many of these Caucasian bitches do nowadays and can't have kids. You know, because I'm tired of these bitches just teaching their children, especially their male children, this hatred towards people of color. And it needs to stop. That's all I gotta say, people. Good night. Peace.